Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a pretty stark warning from hedge fund billionaire Ray Dalio about the future of the United States. Based on a recent interview, he thinks there are these huge storms, political, economic, all converging on us at the same time. So let's get into exactly what he's seeing and why he's sounding such a loud alarm.
Okay, let's just dive right in with the one quote that really sets the whole stage. Dalio isn't just saying, hey, things are a little tense. No, he's drawing a direct line to the 1930s and 40s. I mean, that's one of the most chaotic and transformative decades in modern history. This comparison, it's the anchor for his entire argument.
So where does Dalio start? Well, his whole argument kicks off with what he calls the political storm. He sees these really clear and, to him, alarming echoes of the past. He argues that what's happening in our political world today is the first major crisis we absolutely have to get our heads around.
And look, this isn't just some vague, oh, things feel tense kind of comparison. Dalio gets super specific. He's mapping the conditions of the 1930s directly onto today. He points to these three big things that were true then, and he says are true now. Huge gaps in wealth and values, a total collapse in trust in institutions and each other, and what happens next? A rising demand for strong, controlling leaders to come in and fix it all. He thinks these are the key ingredients cooking up more extreme policies.
Right, and he's not just talking in broad strokes here. He's pointing to what he sees as actual concrete signs of this, let's call it autocratic drift. Things like the government getting more and more involved in private business, direct political shots being fired at the independence of the Federal Reserve, and then there's the populism on both the right and the left, which he says creates these divides that are almost impossible to bridge. The bottom line? He says when people just want a leader to get control of the system, democracy itself starts to get weaker.
So you might be wondering, if things are so concerning, why aren't more people on Wall Street or in business screaming about it? Well, this quote right here is Dalio's answer. He's suggesting there's a real chilling effect going on, that powerful people are keeping quiet because they're genuinely afraid of the backlash if they speak out. That's a pretty heavy claim about the current environment.
Okay, so that's the political storm. Now let's pivot to the second one Dalio is watching, and this one's all about the economy. He sees a massive economic crisis brewing, all centered around the country's debt. And for him, this isn't some far-off problem. He sees it as something coming at us fast. And he really makes it clear this isn't about blaming Democrats or Republicans. It's not about one president. In his view, this is a problem that's been building for years, under both parties. Just this long, slow burn of spending way more than what's coming in, leading to a mountain of debt that he thinks has finally reached a tipping point.
And when you look at the raw numbers, wow, they really paint a picture, don't they? The government is spending around $7 trillion a year, but only bringing in about $5 trillion. That $2 trillion hole has to get filled somehow, and it gets filled by borrowing, issuing huge amounts of new debt every single year.
This is where Dalio's language gets really interesting, and frankly, pretty scary. He doesn't just call it a recession or a downturn. No, he calls it a debt-induced heart attack. He's using that metaphor for a reason. To make this abstract financial problem feel totally real, sudden, and potentially catastrophic for the whole system.
And this isn't something he's talking about happening, way off in the future. He actually puts a timeline on it. He's not talking decades from now. His average guess is about 3 years, give or take, putting it somewhere in that 2 to 5 year window. That means this potential heart attack is, in his view, right around the corner.
So how does this heart attack actually happen? Well, he keeps going with this medical analogy. He says to think of all the interest payments on that mountain of debt like plaque building up and clogging the arteries of the economy. As more and more of the country's money has to go just to service the debt, there's less and less available for everything else. Defense, infrastructure, you name it. It just squeezes everything out.
All right, so this is the moment. This is where those two big storms we've been talking about, the political one and the economic one, smash right into each other. And it all creates what Dalio sees as this impossible situation for the one institution sitting right in the middle of it all, the U.S. Federal Reserve.
So here's the pickle the Fed is in. It's getting hammered with political pressure to keep interest rates low to make borrowing cheap. But that's happening at the exact same time that the sheer amount of new debt being created might make investors both here and overseas start to think, are U.S. government bonds really as safe as they used to be? It's a terrible timing problem.
So Dalio basically says the Fed is staring down a fork in the road, and neither path looks good. It's a classic damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Option 1, they let interest rates rise. That might attract buyers for the debt, but it could make the government's borrowing costs explode, maybe even risking a default.
Option 2, the Fed just prints a ton of money to buy the debt itself, but that floods the world with dollars and crushes its value.
So, what's the takeaway here?
According to Dalio, there's just no easy escape hatch. No matter which button they push, he thinks it leads to a crisis of confidence. Either choice undermines the Fed, makes U.S. debt a much less attractive thing to own, and ultimately really weakens the dollar's special place in the global financial system. Both roads lead to a bad place for the dollar.
Okay, to wrap all this up, we have to understand the bigger picture here. For Dalio, none of this is random. It's not a one-time thing. It's all part of a predictable historical pattern that he has written a whole book about, and he calls it the big cycle.
This idea is basically the key to his whole way of thinking. He believes that history doesn't just happen. It rhymes. It moves in these long, predictable cycles. And the specific recipe he sees today, massive wealth gaps, deep political divisions, and an outside power challenging the existing order, is a pattern he says has played out again and again and again throughout history.
And he lays out this classic pattern, this sequence of events that he sees unfolding right now. See if this sounds familiar. It starts with the gaps in wealth and values getting wider and wider. This, in turn, fuels populism on both sides. Pretty soon, the differences are so great that the normal democratic process just can't solve them. It grinds to a halt. And that's when democracies get fragile, because people start looking for strong leaders to just take charge. And what do those leaders do? They take more control of everything, including the economy.
So at the end of the day, what Dalio is doing here isn't just trying to predict the future. He's holding up a mirror to history, showing us these repeating patterns. He's laid out his case and he's laid out the data, and he's leaving us with one big question, really. Are we paying attention?